We are.
Madam President, I rise today to address a new and very serious threat to our national security. In July of this year, the organization known as WikiLeaks, led by an Australian citizen named Julian Assange, published 90,000 classified intelligence documents related to our efforts in the ongoing war against the Taliban insurgents and al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. In October, WikiLeaks dumped 400,000 classified documents that revolved around the efforts of our nation and our coalition partners to bring democracy, peace, and stability to the people of Iraq. And now, just a few days ago, WikiLeaks has dumped another 250,000 documents that reveal private, often personal communications between diplomats and heads of state. Communication that is necessary for the critical discourse that occurs between governments on the many relevant and challenging international issues of our day. In light of the damage that has already been done and the continuing threat posed by WikiLeaks, I am here today to introduce a bill that will help defend our national interests, protect our troops, and to provide assurance to our friends and allies that what they say to us in private will stay with us, and there will be consequences for the reckless actions taken by WikiLeaks or others who may attempt to do what they have done. Consequences that are consistent with our values and consistent with our First Amendment. Let me spend a few moments examining the nature of this threat and some of the serious implications. After WikiLeaks dumped 400,000 classified documents concerning our efforts to promote democracy in Iraq, the Pentagon spokesman, Jeffrey Morrell, stated that the Department of Defense had to scramble to notify 300 Iraqis because we were immediately concerned about their safety. And he went on to say that as many as 60,000 Iraqis could possibly be identified in these leaked documents. Let us consider the plight of those Iraqis just for a moment. These individuals came forward to us with information that they felt would help their government deal with the insurgency and the terrorist presence that has been an impediment to peace and stability within their nation. Yet, this despicable character, Julian Assange, has rewarded their bravery by naming them to their enemies. This puts their very lives and the lives of their families in jeopardy. This discourages other Iraqis from coming forward and standing up for freedom. This, in turn, jeopardizes the lives of our American troops and harms our efforts to provide stability in Iraq to the point where we can withdraw our troops. And unfortunately, if Iraqis become afraid to speak out against the terrorists in their midst for fear that being named by Julian Assange, succeeding becomes that much more difficult. Now let us turn to Afghanistan. Back in July, I read in the Times of London a very interesting assessment about the implication of Mr. Assange's actions. Let me quote, "Hundreds of Afghan lives have been put at risk by the leaking of 90,000 intelligence documents because the files identify informants working with NATO forces." Let me quote again from the Times. "In just 2 hours of searching the WikiLeaks archives, the Times found the names of dozens of Afghans credited with providing detailed intelligence to U.S. forces. Their villages are given for identification and also, in many cases, their fathers' names. To the credit of the Times, they cited examples to back up their claims, but as any responsible media organization should, they at least in their report took the steps of hiding the names of the villagers who had come forward with information to assist their government and NATO. Madam President, just as WikiLeaks recklessly dumped the leaked intelligence on Afghanistan, a Taliban spokesperson gave an interview in which he said, and I quote, "We are studying the report. We will investigate through our own Secret Service whether the people mentioned are really spies working for the U.S. And if they are spies, then we know how to punish them. I don't think I need to elaborate on how the Taliban punishes their enemies. And now, Madam President, we have this latest dump of classified State Department cables and information. I want to applaud our former colleague, Secretary Clinton, for the excellent remarks that she has made on this issue. Secretary Clinton pointed out that the leaks have put people's lives in danger, threatened our national security, and undermined our efforts to work with other countries to solve shared problems. An essential dialogue takes place between nations, a dialogue that has existed since nations first began. With that dialogue, diplomats need to be able to express their views candidly and, yes, privately. This is how a lot of problems are solved. Our nation is working toward international solutions to some very, very complex problems. The government of Yemen is fighting terrorists that reside within their own borders. The proliferation of nuclear weapons technology and the threat of long-range missiles in North Korea are problems that require multilateral international agreement. Secretary Clinton made another point that I would like to focus on just for a moment. Assange didn't just leak classified details about meetings between diplomats. Our diplomats overseas meet with local human rights workers, journalists, religious leaders, and others, people with a unique insight into a wider range of issues. And unfortunately, we live in a dangerous world where revealing the identity of someone fighting for social issues like women's rights or children's rights, or the identity of an advocate for religious freedom, could have serious repercussions that include imprisonment, torture, or even death. So I wonder if WikiLeaks understands that if Afghan villagers or activists fighting for human rights under oppressive regimes are killed as a result of being named in these leaks, the blood of these good people is on their hands. Before I proceed with an examination of the bill that I've crafted to address this threat, let's be clear about some things. No one should do Julian Assange any credit by referring to him as a journalist or as part of the news media. He is a computer hacker and an anarchist. True to his hacker roots, he's devised a portal through which he hopes members of our government will anonymously and surreptitiously provide him unfettered access to our closest secrets. Make no mistake, these actions have harmed our friends and helped our enemies in a manner prejudicial to the safety and national interests of the United States. So with this threat in mind, Madam President, a threat to the founders, to our way of life that the founders could never have seen coming, we crafted a bill that amends the Espionage Act, specifically Title 18, Section 798. Under current law, this is current law, it is a criminal act for someone who knowingly and willfully communicates, furnishes, transmits, publishes, or otherwise makes available to any unauthorized person any classified information concerning the communication intelligence activities of our United States of America. My bill, which we're introducing today, extends this protection currently afforded to the communications intelligence to what is called human intelligence, or HUMINT for short. This bill protects human intelligence sources and methods. So I want to be very clear. It's my opinion that we can go after Julian Assange under the current statute. But what our legislation does is update this decades-old statute to address this evolving threat prospectively. I have no doubt that Julian Assange is going to put out another document dump out on his website and another one after that. And once he does, this bill will give the administration increased flexibility to deal with him and potentially other copycat organizations that aspire to his likeness. There are a couple of concerns that I want to address. First, one might wonder how this bill stands with our First Amendment. While I hope we can all agree that Julian Assange is no journalist, some might wonder if the amended law that would result from this bill could be applied to the news media. You know, it is pretty frustrating for the intelligence community when communications intelligence sources and methods are blown. When this happens, sources of vital intelligence dry up or become inaccessible, and potentially millions of defense dollars go down the drain. However, despite the serious consequences associated with losing communications intelligence source or method and the damage that does to our national security, no presidential administration has ever prosecuted a member of the news media under the existing statute, which has been on the books since 1951. So let's face it, leaks do happen. As Secretary Gates stated just a few days ago, regrettably, our government leaks classified information like a sieve. This bill does not stop anyone from publishing leaks, but what it does do is it provides a legal incentive to Julian Assange to do what Amnesty International has repeatedly asked him to do, to be more responsible about how classified leaks are handled by not revealing the identity of these classified human intelligence sources. Let me be clear. This bill does not target journalists. Instead, it provides flexibility for the Attorney General with a targeted solution and increased flexibility to deal with WikiLeaks. Now, some might be wondering whether Julian Assange, who is a foreign citizen, can be prosecuted under the Espionage Acts. In fact, the courts long ago established that he can be prosecuted under these statutes. I'm not a lawyer, but if you study the United States versus Zehe from 1986, it becomes immediately clear that Assange can be prosecuted under the Espionage Act. That said, my concern is that our existing laws may have some loopholes in which he can escape. In fact, just a few days ago in the Washington Post, where Attorney General Holder said, and I quote, "To the extent that there are gaps in our laws, we will move to close those gaps." Well, Madam President, I submit that the bill that I'm introducing today with a couple others will do just that. It closes a gap in our laws, and it moves to protect vital human intelligence sources and methods consistent with the manner in which current law communications intelligence is already protected. I want to thank Senators Lieberman, McCaskill, Senators Lieberman and Brown for joining me in this important legislation and for the input that Senators Lieberman, McCaskill, and Brown have given on this important legislation. Madam President, I hope that we can take this bill up, consider it, work with the administration, work with the House, and pass this important legislation so the next time, and we know there will be a next time, that Julian Assange and his associates leaks classified intelligence that puts people's lives in danger, we can actually have another tool in the arsenal that our Department of Justice can go after these despicable people. Madam President, I yield the floor.